Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's enterprise skill session from the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group here at RGU. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this lunchtime session. Hopefully you've got a nice bite to eat. I'm currently getting a lovely glow from the D-side sunshine. We are joined here today by Richard Cormac Corrigan from an organization called Elevator, and we're going to be tackling one of the fundamental questions that often comes up with many new businesses is, where do I find money? How do I find some funding? So we're delighted that Richard's going to be here to talk us through some of those different options, to kind of answer some of your questions and to tell you about some of the amazing competitions. Being in Scotland, you get some exciting opportunities to participate in these competitions with your startup venture. So if you are looking for those next steps for your funding opportunity, today is hopefully an opportunity to go through that. So without any further ado, on behalf of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group, I'd like to welcome Richard, allow you to share your screen and get started with today's session. Over to you, Richard.
Hello, good morning, stroke afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you. And I'm just laughing at the irony of a certain Ken Morrow being on. All will make sense as we go further through the slides. Ken, you're our superstar, but you didn't realize it. So good morning, everyone. I have I reckon about a half an hour to about 40 minutes worth of information to tell you. What I would say is once I'm presenting, I may or may not be able to see messages in the chat. So I'll be relying on Edward and also on Aisha to help out with that. But if you feel that there's something that you need to say and you can't wait till the end, by all means, feel free to, speak up and jump in. Hopefully, it's quite a fairly comprehensive whistle-stop tour through where the money might be. But if there isn't something that's covered, then we should have plenty of time at the end for loads of questions and queries. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer them. And if I don't, between myself, Edward, and Aisha, or it might even be a case of saying we'll come back to you once we have that information. So that's a challenge to you to come up with some tricky questions today. So without any further ado, let's launch into our presentation. So okay, so first of all, can everyone see my screens fine?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I'm here recently from Elevator, but now with something called Converge. If you haven't heard of Converge, Converge is an organization and we support staff, students, and recent graduates from all of Scotland's 18 universities. We help them to commercialize their research and to start new business. So in addition to workshops like this one, our main offer really is the program. And the programs is in the form of 4 challenges. And it's basically a competition. And these categories run across a variety of sectors and stages of development. So we're helping to support, again, students, staff, and recent graduates into getting the business going. So basically, we're here to help you guys. And I will be based sort of here at the EIG, normally most Wednesdays. So if you guys want to pop down and have a chat to me or ask me anything face-to-face, or we can go for a coffee, that's where I'll be most Wednesdays. Okay, so who am I? Richard Cormac Corrigan, and my responsibility is looking after Converge universities in Dundee. So that'll be Abertay and Dundee itself, Aberdeen University, RGU, and UHI as well. So anyone that is thinking of being involved in any of our programs or workshops or anything like that, then in the north and northeast of Scotland, I'm sort of the go-to guy. So who am I? I am somebody who has a huge sort of variety of backgrounds, and I would say I'm very entrepreneurial in the fact that I've failed at most of the things that I've tried, but I've used that collective experience to pick myself up, dust myself down, and move on to the next thing. And that sometimes enables me to be able to help you guys because there's a whole bank of experience there. And I'm also alumnus of RGU. I graduated with a management degree in 2010. So I got you. So there are 4 challenges, like we mentioned before. Which one is right for you? So if any of you guys happen to have been looking at Converge Challenge over the past few months, you may well notice now on the website there's a slight change because our programs have changed slightly. The offering is slightly different. So the 4 challenges this year are basically you've got the Converge Challenge, which is the main one, the Net Zero Challenge, Create Change Challenge, and Kickstart Challenge. So what are these all about? So before we launch into it, just to let you know that you can actually apply up to 3 times. So you've got 3 goes, if you like, with the same idea. And if you as an individual want to come back again with a separate idea, you're more than welcome to do so as well. So Converge Challenge, the big one, the first one, the mothership. This is one that really is for businesses that have got maybe really strong commercial potential and have probably got a fairly solid intellectual property base behind you. These tend to be, not always, but tend to be sort of university spinouts. Often they're life science, engineering, or technology type of businesses, but not always the case. You don't have to be any of those. It's not required for Converge. It's, as we say, it's sector agnostic, so it's open to all sectors. But it does tend to be the more of the high growth and strong IP, intellectual property types of business. So the winner of Converge Challenge, this is the good stuff. Where's the money? The winner of the Converge Challenge receives £50,000 in cash. The runner-up receives £20,000 in cash. And both of these prizes also come with a lot of in-kind support. So we've got commercial partners, everything from intellectual property experts, lawyers, finance. And, really, there's a whole bank of people that are there to help and support you as well. And to be honest, for many people, that is worth more than the actual cash itself. So Net Zero Challenge. Net Zero Challenge is a full challenge this year, and there are 10 places available. And this really is for kind of climate conscious entrepreneurs. We see an awful lot of climate conscious entrepreneurs coming through the books over the last few years, and they're really developing, any sort of solutions that can help to meet net zero carbon goals. This could be anything really. It could be any sector. So it might be about green energy, like Vazil, and he was our winner in the challenge in 2019. It could be improving construction methods that maybe reduce the carbon output, or it might even be waste management. So really, there's a whole variety of fields that could be covered by Net Zero Challenge. The key thing here is that you're contributing to the reduction of carbon. So this challenge gets £30,000 in cash, and the runner-up gets £10,000 in cash. And again, maybe most importantly, you receive a support package from our partners as well. So Create Change Challenge. This is for those creative products that have a social purpose, or for social impact projects that have some creative impact to it. The social impact might be creative or cultural. It really is a broad category. So anyone that's doing something that's thinking that they're making a difference, this might be the category for you. So this category is a winning prize of £30,000 in cash. And again, you get two runners up. Each one gets £10,000. And of course, there's the in-kind. Oh, there we go. There's the in-kind help as well. Ha ha. There's a sneak preview. Do you like that? So the last challenge of our four, this is the Kickstart. This is probably for those businesses, and it tends to be the one that most people apply for. Maybe you're not that far down the road. Maybe you're at an earlier stage of the whole thing. Kickstart may well be right for you. So what can I tell you about Kickstart? Well, Kickstart is smaller prize. You get £10,000 for the winner, and you get runners-up prizes, two of those of £7,500. And we also have, which can be really interesting for you guys, 3 special prizes of £5,000, and these are for the 3 following categories. So showing the most entrepreneurial spirit, the best project in the area of well-being, or the best project in the area of climate action. These ones don't come with income support packages. You basically just get the money for these. But what we tend to find happens is a lot of our Kickstart applicants will then the next year maybe come back and try their hand at one of the other categories as well, once they've moved their business on a little bit. Drum roll, please. There he is. This was not set up, by the way. This is a pure coincidence. So just to show you guys that, this is a national competition. There are 18 universities involved, but RGU tend to do quite well with the support of your EIG as well. So one of our winners last year, as you can see, was Ken Morrow. Great idea. And he ended up taking home £20,000 in cash. The beers are on Ken. Ken also was on the RGU Startup Accelerator in, he was in the Startup Accelerator in 2020. So again, you can see there's a definite route here to, RGU Accelerator people doing quite well. And here's another, Lucy. So Lucy, again, she was another winner last year, and she won from the Creative Challenge category. So she's got £40,000 to play with in her business. And again, she came through the RGU Startup Accelerator program as well. So I'm starting to see a bit of a theme going on here, guys. Okay, so what's the program all about? Well, yes, everyone's about the money. Everyone likes to think money, money, money. It helps the world go around. It helps my business get going. And our price ranges, as you can see, are up to £50,000 in prizes. But other things are important too. You get loads of business training, and this can be through some of our external experts, but it can also be with some of those partners that we mentioned to you before. Something which is really important as well is connectivity. Those of you that have been on any sort of entrepreneurial journey before will know the value of networks. So we will connect you and plug you into lots of the different help that you will get throughout Scotland. And the Scottish ecosystem really is brilliant. I say that with an accent like this. Irish entrepreneurship is really, really famous and does maybe punch above its weight. But I would say the Scottish network, the Scottish ecosystem that you guys have, basically it's a great place to start a business, and there's so much support, and that will continue through our program. And finally, I would say validation. And if you've been on any of the RGU programs, validation, I'm sure, is something that's maybe beaten into you. Validating your idea. Is it a thing? Is it likely to work? How do you know? Well, there's loads of processes that you go through, but coming onto the Converge program, you get a chance to validate it from externally. Lots of experts will come in and speak with you and work with you, and also yourself. It's great for you to kind of prove the worth of what you're doing, come out the other end going, actually, do you know what? I'm not crazy. This could be something important. So I mentioned before about collaboration. These are some of the organizations that we partner up and work with. And to give you an idea, one of the prizes that you will get for somebody is to sit down and have a proper face-to-face and mentoring session with the actual CEO of the Royal Bank of Scotland. So this is kind of the level that we're playing at, guys. It's not just the money, it's also plugging into this incredible network that we have as well. How are we funded? Well, we're funded, the universities help us, which is great. But we also have help from our partners and also from the Scottish Creative Fund. What do we do and what impact do we make? Well, that speaks for itself, really. What I would say to you is this, that you can see here there's an 80% survivor rate of companies that come through Converge. Any companies that started in 2014, and then measuring them again in 2018. So we're talking 5 years, there was a 42% success rate. So I'm not saying that, coming on Converge is a guarantee of success, but it certainly does increase your chances. So you're here today to find out about business funding options. So let's talk a wee bit about, how it really works. So your business will go through several stages of development. And if you're here today, you're probably, most of you, again, at an early stage, somewhere in the idea generation, and maybe you're looking at product or service development stage. So at each of these separate stages, you're going to have different requirements for resources and for funding to help you reach the milestones as you prepare to take your product or your service to the market. So we'll talk a little bit about the different kind of funding that's available in the various stages. So if you're at a idea generation stage where you've identified a problem, perhaps, or maybe you've seen a gap in the market and you've produced potential solutions to this. At these early stages, you're maybe testing these solutions and you're trying to understand your market. Then afterwards, you're developing your product or your service, you're producing improvements and you're finding more efficient ways of dealing with that problem. You've maybe identified a problem and you're analyzing the actual business needs. Then you're trying to understand what's required to turn your solution or your potential product or service into a real business that people are willing to pay money for and become your customers for. And then you reach the launch phase. This is where you're ready to put your MVP out there into the market in front of your customers and for them to hopefully pay to receive it. Then you'll be able to establish yourself, and then we're into the growth stage of the business. And this might be just, increasing in size or being able to access new customers in your initial market, or maybe it's expanding into other markets or potentially other products and services. Right, so what are your options? Grants, competitions, investment, crowdfunding, debt, and sales. That's what we're going to speak about today. Now, I'm not sure if any of you guys here are from a research background, in which case then maybe you want to hear about translation grants. So I'll rattle through this. So a translation grant is, really for those of you that are maybe working in research and you're kind of at the point of thinking, right, how do we turn this research, make it commercial? How do we get it out there into the market? And how do we get, money involved in the whole situation? So quite often, if this is you, then there will be funding that you have, research funding, and there tends to be like a gap between the research funding and then a leap to actually commercialization. So this gap, there's a few different organizations that can help you. Some of the research councils will offer translational grants. to make academic projects that are at really advanced stages. They'll help them through to commercialization. Now, specific eligibility criteria, you're going to hear that quite a lot today. And these translation grants will have very specific eligibility criteria. And quite often they're related to who funded the initial research to begin with. So for example, if you were funded by the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, I'm going to refer to that as the BBSRC from this point onwards, then the BBSRC will have follow-on funds to take these projects to the market. And if you've been funded by the BBSRC previously, then that's how you get qualified for the grants. Now, what do the grants cover? Well, it might be a specific stage of development that they're willing to fund. It may be it's individuals that they're going to fund. And quite often these grants can support either for a project or for an individual, sometimes both. Now, these can range from something called pump priming. This really is like small amounts of money you'll get to help you sort of do a bit of market research maybe and move on to the next stage. And maybe if it's like a high growth spin out, then maybe Scottish Enterprise can help you and they'll have a full program of commercialization. And they even provide like a commercial champion. They'll do market research and support sort of the final stages of your translation to get you out into the market and to get you spun out. So sometimes, especially the pump priming grants, rather than the person applying directly for the grant, an institution like RGU will apply for like a block grant, and then they will disperse it internally. So if you've got something that you think is translatable, so basically turning research into something commercial, and you require funding to maybe further investigate that, your first port of call will probably be, Ed and the team here at the EIG. They may well have the list of all the, he's either shaking his head or nodding his head. They may well have the list of all the funding that they have available internally, and they'll keep you right. So, business grant. So again, the word is pre or post incorporation. And this is really about, whether your business is up and running and registered or whether it isn't. And some grants are available for pre-incorporation, and some are available for those that are at still a fairly early stage of development. Maybe you haven't started a business yet. And some of them are in fact to actually help you to, the costs of incorporating your business and actually getting it started. And others are post-incorporation, and you can only qualify for them after you've set up and registered a business. A common theme that you're going to hear today, and a question that we're often asked is, can you tell me my exact path to the money? And it's very difficult for anyone really to do that, because no two businesses, no two startups will be the same, no two routes to market will be the same, and also it is a movable feast. So you'll find that I will be directing you to a variety of different sources. I'm maybe not telling you specific funds a lot, and that's because the funding can change, and it can change, really regularly. So it is almost like, I think some of my colleagues that work in the likes of Business Gateway, they're almost like doctors trying to keep on top of medical research, because it does change sometimes on a daily basis. So I would say it is really worth having a really good look and to see what's available for post and pre, because the problem sometimes is people will see a fund or something, a business grant, and they think, oh, I want that. But the prerequisite for that is that I start my business, and then they'll start the business. And then they realize that there's other grants or other help that would have been available to them. And then because they've chosen the blue pill, they don't get access to the red pill, for example. So again, I would say speak to people like Business Gateway. They will be able to show you the landscape, and you'll be able to plot out exactly the things that you are going to do and the things that you aren't going to do as well. And again, always speak to your, Ed and Isha and the team as well. Something else you might have heard of is match funding. So a lot of business grants won't provide you with 100% of the funding that you require. They usually have what's called a match funding requirement. So what this means is that if you put forward, say, a proposal for a project that costs, let's say, £50,000, sometimes the grant will give you 70% of that. And then you need to put in the other 30% in match funding from your own funds. Now, when I say your own funds, that could be from a grant that you've already gotten, from investment, or it could be from revenue, money you have coming in order to top up and to meet that final £50,000. But you don't always get all the money. Specific eligibility criteria, I've mentioned this before. Some grants are going to be more appropriate than others, depending on your stage of development. And all grants will have very specific eligibility criteria. Could be based on your stage of development, or could sometimes be based on your location. So there will be local economic development agencies, we have a few here in the Northeast, that are supporting activities in your local regions. So for example, if you're looking to apply for a business grant and then suddenly you realize it's being issued by Glasgow Council or something, it's unlikely that it's going to be appropriate for you. And again, these things can often be sector specific. They might ask you for, yes, we will invest, we will help you, but you need to have a certain level of technology that they need to meet, or it could be there's a particular challenge. So for example, Innovate UK provides really, really big grants, but they're going to be on very specific areas. So it could be green technology, could be developing materials, could be, looking into specific diseases. So you can have a look at that. But something else to bear in mind is that often a lot of these business grants, the application process can be really arduous. So you need to think, do you have the time and the effort and the emotional energy to apply for some of these? If you haven't checked if they're right for you, there's conditions involved with them. So, really what I'm saying is don't just go and apply for everything. Take a lot of time to look into what's available to make sure that it is right for you. Okay. So many business grants will also operate based on, spending first and claiming back on the money later with receipts. So this makes sure you need to make sure before you apply for these that you actually have the money. It's great for somebody to say, we'll cover your costs. We'll cover £10,000 of your cost, for example. But if you don't have that £10,000 to begin with, then you've kind of wasted your time. So this is where match funding can be really helpful, because it's like you almost think of it as like as a top up. Now, sometimes as well, it's worth you thinking about the timings as well, because yes, they've said we'll give you £10,000. Yes, you've got your receipts to claim. Yes, the money's coming, but it could be weeks or sometimes months before that gets processed. And how's your cash flow? Can you afford to wait that 5, 6, 7, 12 weeks to get the money back? A lot of grants are also related to research and development, R&D. So they'll be about developing a new product or a service, or maybe moving on to the next stage of development. Maybe, it's about getting your minimum viable product sorted. So they can often, sometimes, not always, support something that's higher risk that you're trying to develop in your business. That is rarer though. So as I mentioned before, local authorities are normally a really good source of funding because they want to support the business and enterprise in the local region. They'll have targets, for this, and they will have funding that's really specific to attract business into the region. Some local authorities will even try to encourage businesses to move out of other local authorities. The kind of a carrot they'll have to try and get you to move from somewhere else, maybe to Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire. So again, where do you go for this? Enterprise offices, business gateway, local authorities are really good places to start looking for these sorts of grants. So for example, if you were now to Google Aberdeen City business grants, you'll get I think about 3 different, after the ads, you'll get a page from Aberdeen City Council that says things like Business Traction or Business Transition Fund, Invest Aberdeen, Aberdeen Inspired, Business Gateway, SEPA, and Opportunity Northeast. So they'll pop up for you. And also, if you were to say to Google the same thing for Aberdeenshire, you'll get a page that looks a little bit like this. So all the council areas will be slightly different. So I'm just checking to see if we have. Oh yeah, just checking. No, there's a few messages there from Ken and the guys, but no actual questions at the moment. Do we have any questions before I pop on? Nope. Okay. Loads of information, guys. Business competitions. So business competitions is another great way, for you guys to get access to money and help as well. So there are so many competitions out there. There's probably as many competitions as there are sectors and stages of development. And, I couldn't give you a comprehensive list because, like I say, it's a movable feast. If I was to, give you a comprehensive list today, tomorrow, it may well have changed. So again, you need to yourself to be plugged into this. You need to keep in regular contact, I would say, with the guys in EIG, keep in contact with me, keep in contact with, if you are connected with Elevator, Business Gateway, keep in contact with people there to find out exactly, what's happening and what's going on. So Converge, you see, is one of us. Converge I'll work for. Scottish Edge as well is really popular. And if you're a student, you're probably familiar with something like Santander. So there's also a new one called University Sparks. And this is quite interesting. You get a chance to actually, using virtual cash, you get like I think it's £10,000 of virtual cash. And then the students themselves vote for other student businesses. That's quite interesting. That's literally brand new. So again, eligibility criteria. competitions are just the same as everything else. Some you can apply for before you're incorporated, some afterwards. It's really important that you read the small print. And some will cover different stages of development as well. Some will have, eligibility based on who the people are. You'll find now there might be, for example, a fund for, say, female-led business startups. So with Converge, for example, the prerequisites for us is you have to have a connection to university. So to come on the Converge challenge or any of our challenges, you must be a current student, a current member of staff, or you must be a graduate within the last 2 years. And there's also like a whole variety of deadlines with these. So Converge, for example, it's a once a year thing. And Edge can normally have a couple of rounds a year. And some of them will have something called rolling deadlines. So it's really important if you're looking at business competitions that you pay very close very close attention to eligibility criteria and to the deadlines as well. So, and also something to think about as well is it's not just the money, there's also other benefits from going through these programs as well. And that could be, help, it could be connections. So when you're looking at competitions, don't just go and judge them on the size of the pot of money as well. Look at what else it can offer you. But what I would say, same as everything else, is you don't want to become a serial competitor. What I mean by that is that you don't want to necessarily enter to everything all the time, because what will tend to happen then is you spend so much time preparing for these competitions, and the competitions are designed to help you with your business, that maybe you take your eye off your business a little bit and you become a competition person rather than an actual business person. So it is kind of, I suppose, important that you take a step back and decide, have you got the time? Do you need to do this? Will this particular competition move you on to the next stage of your development? So competitions can sometimes be sector specific. Oh, that's a very good question from Diane. Does Converge include associate students, those of us enrolled with the RGU Accelerator Program? I believe the answer to that is a resounding yes. Edward, would you like to jump in?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, that's the answer. It wasn't always. It normally is full-time students and those graduated for 2 years, I think, something like that. But yes, no, Converge are happy to accept associate students. Ken and Lucy would have been associate students, I'm sure.
Yeah, Ken says it had better be. Yeah, we know where you live, Ken. Excellent. So yeah, competitions can be sector specific as well. So there might be a competition, specifically around green energy or net zero, social enterprise, life sciences. So it's worth, again, having a search and speaking to university enterprise offices. So I'm kind of sounding a little bit like a broken record here, because I think the advice is important. You've already got people on the ground here that can help you, people that, day to day are up to their elbows in this sorts of things. So they can, help you to save some time. They can help you to, help direct you in the right way, the right competitions, the right loans, the right everything for you at a particular point in time. So for example, we're talking about business competitions. RGU is running let's see, I need to make sure I get this right. The UN Sustainability Goals Student Ideas Challenge. It's a mouthful, rolls off the tongue. That's been run by Aisha, for example. So there is a business competition happening right now in the school. Aisha, would you like to say anything about it?
Yep, thanks, Richard. That's great. What I'll do also, hopefully you can hear me okay. What I'll also do is share the link in the chat box, if that's okay, if anybody would like to apply. It's a brand new competition, the student competition we've launched, and it's specifically to encourage students to think of just innovative ideas to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So there's 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So there's quite a lot of range. So it'd be absolutely great if anybody would like to apply. It's a monthly competition and it basically offers you cash prizes as well. So there's 6 cash prizes up for grabs every single month, and it runs from February till the end of June. So I would definitely recommend if anybody's interested in giving back or, helping to tackle those UN challenges, it would be a great opportunity to potentially work together as a team, or individuals can apply as well.
Fab.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And apologies, Aisha didn't know that I was going to bring her in then. There's like local accelerator programs as well. The RGU, I think the regional accelerator is running at the moment, I believe, Ed. So there's quite a few people involved in that. There's a whole selection of accelerator programs in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire at the moment. One of which, for example, is the Elevator Accelerator, which is an academic one which runs in the summertime as well. So, there's plenty of stuff out there. You just need to take the time to kind of plot your own course and map of what's right for you and what's right for you right now. Because again, different stages of your business, you might say no to something at the moment, but this time next year, it might be ideal for you as well. So next up, investments. Yes. Investment is something that some companies will want to take on board to develop. So basically, for those of you that don't know, basics, an investment is getting cash for your company in return for shares of the business. So someone gives you money and then you give them shares, which means that they own some of your company. They have a percentage share normally in your company. Now, investment is not always appropriate. So a lot of people will assume, from outside of business looking in, that you must get investment for your business. Maybe they've watched Dragon's Den or Shark Tank and think, oh, business people, I need investment for my business. But not all people, not all companies will need this. Generally, it's sort of at the early stage where it's most appropriate is if you're doing something that's got a high initial capital cost. So maybe it's life sciences or engineering. It's something where you need like a lot of specialist equipment, for example, at the start. So this is where you'd need a big injection of cash, potentially to grow your business. So, investors really, they're looking for businesses that have a high growth margin. They want to get their money back. So something where, you've only got like a 5 or 10% gross margin that allows you to make a small amount of profit on what you're doing, it's probably not going to be appropriate for investors. They want to see a business they can make a big profit from. So they prefer, companies in growing markets. It's something that's potentially going to grow fast and have lots of customers. And they also normally want you to have an exit strategy. So a way that these investors will be able to get their money back. Now that could be through selling the company to another larger company, could be going on the stock market. So again, you need to think very carefully as to whether investment is appropriate for your business. So, usually investment comes to companies that are at a much higher stage of development than some of those earlier stage businesses that we've been talking about, usually. Investors generally are looking for you to maybe already have customers. Maybe if not customers you've got customers lined up. You've got perhaps somebody signed a contract with you or has made a commitment they're going to buy some of your product or use your service. But again, it does depend on different sectors. So say something like life science. It might be, if it's something where there's a strong regulatory environment where things happen slowly, it might be your customers are like a long way off, but maybe the potential return on the investment is massive. So therefore, investors are willing to take the risk. But there's other things they're looking at. Might be, for example, intellectual property and protectable intellectual property. So you own a thing. So this isn't always a deal breaker, but quite often, though, it will increase the value of your company. So things, for example, to have would be patents, trademarks, design rights, something that you have that creates that asset for the company. Now, there's no I in team, and I would say there's very much is I in team as an investment in team, because this is probably the number one thing that your investors are looking at your team. They want to make sure that you've got a strong team, you've got the right expertise, you understand markets and customers, you got drive and resilience, which is really important to go through this really tough entrepreneurial journey. There are very, very few people that have been through an entrepreneurial journey. I'll tell you that it's easy. It can be really hard work. So they need to be able to trust the team to be able to accomplish that work. So something that's, has been said before is that investors, they invest in people, not in ideas. And they'd rather support a strong team with a mediocre product than a strong product with a mediocre team. And that, something else that investors can offer, it's expertise to improve the product itself. But you can't make a weak team stronger if that team does not have the drive and the desire and the passion to take the business forward. So these are the things the investors will look for. And it's, sometimes if you watch Dragon's Den, you'll see that the deals that people accept are maybe not the deals that you would on first look, oh my goodness, they've taken less money, but why have they gone for that particular dragon? And it might be because that dragon, that expert, knows the market really, really well. So the value to their knowledge and the value of their help sometimes is worth more than pure cash or percentage in the business as well. So what is the reality of investment? I've kind of alluded to it a little bit. Investors will want to have some control of the business. They won't necessarily take it over from you, but they will probably have a seat on the board. Most likely they'll have voting rights in terms of the activities that you're deciding to do. So if you want to keep full control of your business, and I know some of you probably will, and you don't let anybody else have a say in the have a say in it, then investment is probably not for you. Yeah, and you don't need to think necessarily that not getting investment is a backward step. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. I think sometimes that the way they present things in Dragon's Den can be a little bit artificial. You know, we'll give you this much for this percent of your company, providing a valuation of your company, and then take a percentage based on the valuation of how much they give you. It's not as simple as that, you know. But investors, they will typically take, they want a chunk. They typically will take like 10 to 30% in each round of investment. So let's say originally 100% of the company is yours. You take on investment, you'll probably then have maybe 70%. And maybe then the next stage, you need more money, more investment. So your own stake will drop down to 40%. So each stage, your stake gets diluted. So you'll have a smaller stake, but it's a bigger pie. You know, so you have to weigh these things up. So what I would say is they will normally appoint an observer or a director. They will normally want to have voting rights as part of the decision making, and they will expect substantial return on their investments on exit. So again, how much they really want depends on the investor, but they'll expect to get their money back. Now, you know, investment is a high risk activity, so they understand that they won't always get their money back. Investors will often generally have a portfolio, and they will have what they call high risk and low risk, and you know, it will be geared up differently. So they probably will say, well, we expect that every fifth or sixth company that we invest in will make money, but we also know that maybe 2 or 3 of those will fail. So you know, it is it's an educated risk, I would say. Now the thing is, ultimately, if the company succeeds, they expect the business to exit and they expect to get their money back. So they're not in it for charity. Okay, so business angels you may have heard of. Business angels are a little bit different. They generally tend to be what we call as high net worth individuals. So rich people, people that have got spare cash and they want to do something with it. And they might want to do it out of the goodness of their own hearts because they want to, you know, they've got an area that they're really interested in and they want to support businesses in this area. Or it might just be that, you know, they're wealthy because they invest in companies and they want to, you know, have fun, play the game, and do it on maybe a smaller level than, you know, the big corporate investment. So generally, an angel who's willing to invest in Scotland, you're looking at small amounts. So between 5 and maybe 50K would be kind of standard. What generally tends to happen, though, is that you get a lot of these high net worth individuals will club together and form a syndicate. And this gives them a wee bit more, you know, sort of power. It also, if you like, dilutes the risk a little bit, and it gives them a bigger pot for them to play with. So then you're talking about maybe investments of, say, 50,000 to £500,000, sort of in the UK. But it can go up in certain circumstances to maybe a couple of £1 million. Now, angels, they do tend to invest at an earlier stage of development. So they do expect that, you know, their investment will be diluted if there's later rounds of investment. And they also will maybe expect that their exit will take a wee bit longer. They tend to be more patient. So they maybe won't expect to see an exit for maybe 5, maybe 8 years, sometimes longer, depending on the sector. So for example, if an angel syndicate invests in life science, which is notoriously long to spin out, they realize that they may not have an exit for maybe even 10 years, but they will expect a 5 or 10 times return. So for example, they give you £100,000, they'll expect £500,000 back. So angel investment can sometimes have certain clauses, and it's, you know, there's a lot of complications in it. I won't go into any great amount of detail right now, but I suppose what it comes down to is, again, small print as well. So always read the small print before you rush into any kind of investment. So something else to bear in mind as well is that when you come to the likes of venture capital, which we'll talk about in a minute, sometimes if you've already had angel investment, then perhaps venture capital they don't want to muddy the waters. They might not want to get involved in it as well. So, you need to be thinking about further stages of the development of your business at the start to make sure that you basically don't paint yourself into a corner at an early stage. So syndicates generally will have particular sectors that they're experts in and they support. So they'll invest basically on the expertise of their own members. So what I would say is, for example, if you approach a group that has expertise in, say, life science, and you're in the creative industries, that would probably be a no-no. Don't do that. Something else is not to go too early. Don't go too early to a lot of these syndicates who maybe don't specialize in super early. So do your homework, do your due diligence, find out what sort of companies they work with, find out what stage of companies they want to work with. It's very much about a first impression. You do not want to burn your bridges too early by going too early, and it's like shooting your bullets too early. What might be nice is because angels, they're not necessarily these big, huge corporate conglomerates, they're individuals. So getting an introduction, a personal introduction at early stages, there's nothing wrong with that. I would say, without prejudice, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. If you're in a networking situation and somebody introduces you to an angel, well, that's fantastic. If you, for example, speak to the guys in EIG as well, they may well have a network of angel investors you can chat to about. There'll be loads of events, networking events, where no doubt they'll be at. So I would say it's about your general networking without being specific, getting yourself known in the angel community without specifically approaching any particular angels until it is prudent to do so. If you were, for example, to come on to the Converge Challenge, then during the process, you will get to pitch to angels a few times, and you'll also perhaps get networking opportunities with them as well. And in that environment, well, then they're interested to find out about your business, not necessarily with any preconceptions or any guarantees that they will work with you afterwards. So it's a neutral situation. What I will say is the Scottish Angel Network, they're really collaborative. So for example, if you did happen to approach one and your idea, your business wasn't exactly right for them, then there's a big chance that they might actually pass you on to another group where maybe it is. So again, these are just a couple of examples of some of the examples you have in Scotland. Again, I would say speak to your EIC to have an idea about what exactly is available at any point in time. What I would say to you is that a lot of what we're speaking about may not be right for you right now and may not be right for you in the future. But I think it's quite important for you to kind of get a broad understanding of all the things that are available for you. And this enables you to be able to, to help you to make the right choices at the right time about the right help for you. Venture capital, VC. This is kind of the last of the main kinds, really. Venture capital generally come in at a later round. It can include high net worth individuals, but it also tends to come from things like pension funds or government schemes. Generally, it tends to be kind of a corporate or financial sector that's funding venture capital. And we're talking like maybe 2 to 10 million of investment, generally, depending on the particular VC fund. So what I will say to you again is just look out, angels and VCs. It's not always, it doesn't always work that you go angels to VC as well. There can be clashes. So do just make sure you understand exactly what you're signing up for. And venture capital will often want to keep their foot in the game. So generally, if they help you out on the first round and you're looking for more money to develop further down the road, then often they'll be approachable to do that as well. Venture capital tends to be less risky, more risk averse than angels. So they probably want you to be further along. They probably want it to be more of a guaranteed bet that they put the money into you and they get the money back again. And they're looking for a return in average, maybe 3 to 5 years, depending on the sector. If there's big money involved, if it's something that potentially could be high value at the end, they may well expand that a wee bit, but they are looking for their money out. And then you can expect them to want a return of maybe 10 times or more. Okay, so a few things you might know about is the Creator Fund. That's a student-run VC, and they tend to look strangely at earlier stage projects, and something like the Deep Tech Seed Fund. So Deep Tech Seed Fund, I'll just give you a quote of what they say. We invest in deep tech startups in Europe that have managed to connect with some potential customers and are beginning to find exciting evidence of global demand for what it is that they hope to be able to create. And they also look at earlier stage projects. So there's also something else which is known as a corporate venture. So this will be like a big company that maybe takes some of its profits and they'll have a side company, a smaller part of the company that invests the profits. Generally, that tends to be in areas that the business works in. So for example, Cisco is one of our partners, big technology company. They've got a venture arm and they invest in early stage companies that have sort of technology that Cisco is interested in. So some of these corporate ventures will be very late stage, like DC Thomson, for example, publishing house. They invest in lots of different things, but generally at a very, very late stage of development, so very close to exit. So you can see it's all about risk and return. If they're risking more, they want a bigger return. So what I would say to you then, if you're looking to start getting out there and speaking to angel investors, do your research, do your homework, try and do it in a neutral way to begin with, whether that's meeting people at events or entering competitions and having them as judges. You want to get yourself out there and known rather than necessarily be in everybody's face asking the questions and getting your timing wrong. So crowdfunding. Some people think that crowdfunding is just, the best thing ever and it's a savior and it is like a golden bullet. Not always. Like everything else, there's pluses and minuses. So there are 3 different types, as you can see. First type generally is donation, which tends to be for charities. So there's no expectation of getting it back. You are literally just giving money away. Reward is the most common. This is the one that most people, when they think of crowdfunding, they think of this. This generally tends to be somebody will advertise that they need money to make a thing. And once they make the thing, that allow them to sell the thing. And they look for sort of crowdfunding. So they'll maybe stick it out of the internet and they'll collect lots of cash, enables them to make their thing, and then they can sell their thing. So one example that we had in Converge was a business called Sweet. And what they did was they made reusable water bottles and they used leftovers from wheat production. So the bits that would normally be thrown away after they've taken all the edible parts away. So they repurposed that into a material that can replace plastic in making water bottles. And then they brought their first product onto the market by running a Kickstarter campaign. So if you had sort of contributed to the Kickstarter campaign, then if you like, you're saying, I'll give you the money, but then I'll be the first customer. You generally will get the first run of bottles that are manufactured. So this sort of crowdfunding campaign, you put a certain amount of money in, you meet your goal, you then get the bottle back once they've manufactured it. Okay. So crowdfunding can be a great way of getting cash flow without needing massive investments, particularly if you're making a product. And crowdfunders are really popular for things like board games. You don't need a lot of money to get the initial run of board games printed. And so you raise that little bit of money to get your first customers because they're basically buying that board game. And if you like, it's almost like get a little bit of money, make the product, sell the product to get the money to continue with your business. So it is a little bit like a roller coaster, really. Now, equity, popular in the last few years of equity crowdfunding. And this basically is the same as your general investment. You're raising money in exchange for shares, but instead of having like 1 or 2 main investors, you're having dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of very small scale shareholders. They put a small amount of money in exchange for a small number of shares. So equity crowdfunding has been it's a kind of a complicated scenario, though. It's not really simple. Also to bear in mind is if you're needing investment at a later stage of your development, then again, angels, VCs will often maybe not want to be interested. You'll often see on Dragon's Den, people are talking about their idea, their product. They're asked who's involved. They'll mention that they have there's other investors involved, and sometimes the dragons will go, well, I'm not going to get involved now. I don't want to mix it up. So something that you might have heard of, Brewdog. They've made huge advances in equity crowdfunding with Equity for Punks. That was extremely successful, and it allowed them literally to catapult their business to the next level. What happens now when they decide to launch their IPO, and which I think is something that was on the cards to them for a while, that may then become problematic for them. We'll have to wait and see. So there's websites like Crowdcube, and you can set up a equity crowdfunding campaign. It's dead easy, follows all the legal requirements, and it gets all of that sorted out for you. So lots of small investors who maybe like your idea can contribute maybe £50, £100. And this is why a lot of those small companies do really well, because they've got something interesting behind them that people can jump on, and they feel like they're part of the company's journey for only a little amount of money. So there's a company on Converge called Clover, and they recently were looking for £150,000 of Crowdcube. They ended up getting £320,000. So they did quite well as a result of that. I'm going to stop and check for. I keep mixing up Ken more. Yeah, Ken, you don't want to mix up an IPA and an IPO. Just checking the questions, guys. Okay.
So there's one from Milena there who's asking, how would you approach crowdfunding to make it successful? Have you answered that one already yet?
No. I have not. No, I've not. That's a good question. I suppose what you need to do is you need to decide, what is success? Is success just the money for you? Are you trying to get the most amount of money possible? In which case, I would say it's all about storytelling with crowdfunding, in my opinion. What is the story that you're telling? And how do you get people, engaged with your story? How do you get them excited with your story? And I would say that's about, where do you want to go? So you're painting the picture of where you want to go. So you're inviting people to join you on this journey. That, I suppose, that would be my piece of advice. So somebody like Bob Keeler, when he does his storytelling sessions, telling the story to get people engaged, I think would probably be a really, really good start. Any thoughts on that?
I was going to add, we had one of these equity crowdfunding platforms called Seeders come and talk to a cohort a couple of years ago. And one of the things that surprised me about what they said about crowdfunding was how much of it is done before you even launch on the platform. So you should have done probably, I think they said something like 60% of your crowdfunding should be done before you even get on the platform. Because as soon as you launch, if you're not already looking at being pretty much funded or overfunded, you don't show up very well on the system. If you've got 0% funded, people won't find you on the system. It's quite difficult. Whereas if you're 60, 70% funded, all of a sudden you look really interesting. And it's almost that fear of missing out where, you're almost at that 100% and people start to say, oh, loads of people, 100 people have already been interested in this. Oh, okay, I want to get in. And then they tend to they challenge you to overfund. Which I wouldn't have expected. I thought the whole point was you just pop it up on there and lots of random people invest in you, but no. So I guess in addition to the great storytelling, be prepared to do a huge amount of the legwork before you even get on the platform and find people to invest. That's what they said anyway.
I like that as well. For example, Clover, they did more than twice what they expected. So I suppose there's psychology in this as well. If your number is low enough to be people might think it's achievable and I can help with this, that's great. But if it's low enough, it might actually mean that more people will contribute because they think they can make a difference. So, I mean, something like doubling it is quite common. I know that, I'm trying to think of a gentleman, he's got the beer dispensing machines. Oh, it'll come to me.
Sam Pettifer from eBar. Sam. Oh no, has Richard's internet gone? That's what happens. He's on campus today. And typical. He can run through here. Tell him to come through here. Oh, pull him through here. He can come and chat through here. Always the technical issues. Hopefully you can still hear me. Scott, you've got all the jargon there. Excellent. Thunderclap. That's what we need to know. Ken, you could just keep focusing on the IPA. Don't worry about the IPO. Just keep the business going with the IPA. And he's disappeared. Keep your questions coming in and hopefully he can answer them in just a few seconds. Okay. Yes, the slides will be shared after the session. So we'll capture all this and it'll go up on the Entrepreneurship Toolkit as it's coming in. There we go. Richard's just getting reconnected. So what's Scott saying? With crowdfunding, make sure you understand the platform's needs and the whole environment as well as your own story. God, well done, Scott. Good stuff in there. Ken, any top tips on writing a successful Converge application?
Get as much help from more talented people as you possibly can.
Okay, amazing. Richard is still here.
Still here. Hi, yeah, I'll make sure I share the slides with you. The internet's gone funny here. But what I can do is I can tell you the last couple of slides really was just about your sales and debt. So what I would say is that ultimately as a business, you really want to, sales is kind of where it's at. All this other stuff is great, but you want to be in a position to be making sales as soon as possible. And you might be thinking it's difficult to do that when you don't have a thing, but you can actually get arrangements with companies that maybe will be using your product or your service in advance. Maybe there's exclusive deals you can do. They can help you to maybe develop that as well and give you some cash in advance for that. I know lots of entrepreneurs that, I'm not saying I would recommend this, lots of entrepreneurs that will maybe go on something like Fiverr and will generate cash somewhere else doing something else just to get the money. So, you don't have to earn the money in the thing that you want to be doing by doing the thing you want to be doing. You can do lots of different things, and money's all the same color. And a shop will accept it whether you earned it on Fiverr or whether you earned it selling your amazing product. Debt is something as well to be worried about. You ultimately in anything you may well end up accruing debt. At an early stage, it's something to be very mindful of. You can take on personal debt, you can take on debt on behalf of your company, but just bearing in mind with death that normally you have to put, there's a consequence of that. So if you cannot pay that back, there will be a consequence. It's like a mortgage. So generally, we would advise you to be careful at an early stage. We've all heard stories of people who've done something called bootstrapping, where they will have, if you like, taken all their credit cards to the max. Yeah. So you will only ever hear people saying that I've maxed out my cards and I did this, I did that, and then look at all the amazing things that happen. But people that go the other way, you tend not to hear too much about them. You tend not to hear too much about the negative stories of where it goes wrong. Yes, there will be success stories, but I would say that it is the exception rather than the rule. There are other things like government loans. At the moment, I mentioned to you before, the likes of Business Gateway will be able to tell you about some of the loans that are happening at the moment, particularly after COVID. So there would almost be on a daily basis a new loan that's out with quite a tight deadline. Apply today, 2 hours are gone and it's over. I mean, I'm not joking, that's how quick it was. There's also peer-to-peer lending. So things like, I think it's CrowdCircle as well. You will have people who will, if you like, put their money into a pot that will then be lent to somebody else that will make interest and they make money back on that as well. So that's an interesting way of doing things. If you're, I think it's 30 and you're under, you've got the Princess Trust as well that you can maybe apply to. And they'll also have like some small little grants to get you started. And again, just to say, final one on credit cards, be careful out there, people, is all I'm saying. So things to remember, I would say consider all of your funding options. Don't rush into things. Speak to, as Ken said, speak to as many people as possible. Do as much planning as you possibly can. Now, we all know that no plan, survives the first contact with the enemy. We know that. But if you've got no plan at all, or if you're just stumbling from, one amount of money to the next amount of money, you're going to end up painting yourself into all of those corners. So please don't do that. Be realistic. Be realistic. There's no point in going to an investor or getting a loan or anything for, say, £20,000 if ultimately you need £30,000. Be realistic. Most investors would rather you asked for that money that you needed that will help them to get their money back rather than asking them for less money that will ultimately make you less successful. So, I would say be honest and be clear with everyone that you're speaking to as well. There's something called the 110% rule. So if you think you need £10,000, well then add an extra 10% into that just in case. And that is it. How are we doing for time?
Just at 1 o'clock now. Whew. Made it even with the technical issues. I just had one point that I was going to mention. I'll take off this blurry background. Is more of a controversial one I saw online was apparently in the publishing industry, a way that book publishers or authors fund this is they use the advance from their books, so they're £100,000. They buy in advance loads and loads of copies of their own book. They store them, so that means that the New York Times bestseller list sees these massive volumes of books purchased, even though the author themselves has bought it. That bumps it up to the New York Times list or the top W.H. Smith list that encourages more people to buy it, because otherwise it's not going to get ranked at all. And then the authors sell their 100,000 copies of their own books at a better price because they're all first editions.
That's so naughty.
That's just rumor has it, but there is some sneaky tactics out there in industry. So whatever funding route you go down, make sure you figure out the same. Oh yes, Alexandra said the same about music industry.
Yes, finding out in the olden days of the music industry, the top 40 or whatever, there would be a selection of music shops, and it was only the sales from these music shops that were counted, and they would then extrapolate and, you know, across, you know, if there was 10 shops, then they base it on 100 shops. And they would find out, executives would find out, and they'd go into the shops, they'd buy all the albums, all the singles. Yeah, which is probably why Zig Zig Sputnik got to #1. That's all I'm saying.
Bob the Builder theme, Christmas song. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll double check if there's any questions. A quick one for Bevan. Do you think there's any particular business that can't sail through as a result of some sort of regulations or resistance? Oh, I wonder what that was in relation to. I'm not sure that one. I think we've covered all the rest of the questions. Some messages coming in at the bottom. Plenty of verified buyers on Amazon. Yes. So there you go. Look out for all the controversial techniques used. So unless there's anyone else with questions, the best to say thank you to Richard, despite the technical issues with the Wi-Fi. I hope you've got a good summary of all the different concepts and funding options available to you. If you have any questions, please get in touch and I will be sure to share the slides after the session. Thank you for joining this enterprise skills session. Head a look at rgu.ac.uk/events for our next one. We have a masterclass coming up later this month with Lucinda Bruce Gardine, founder of Genius Foods, so you can get some more insight into entrepreneurial journeys there. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.